The NHL is alive and well. And if you haven't been tapped into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, you best check your pulse because hockey across the league is buzzing, and we're going to break it all down on Thursday's episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Giddy up, my friends, and here we go. Wednesday night in the NHL was absolutely sensational, meaning the Thursday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast is jam-packed with everything that you need to know from across the world of hockey and, of course, fantasy hockey and betting. Shout out to the everydayers. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. It's your boy Big Flip Livingstone here once again for a solo episode. My boy Steele will be back tomorrow holding it down. Have no fear. Oh my goodness me, my friends. Honestly, Wednesday night's action was some of the best that I've seen in a long time, and my squad took an absolute pumping. The Toronto Maple Leafs might be in trouble here with the Tampa Bay Lightning nipping at their heels. We're going to take a look at both playoff pictures, the wild card race in the East, the playoff picture out west, the Vancouver Canucks looking like that Pacific division is theirs. The Dallas Stars need to be discussed as well. And I think one of my favorite angles of today, actually of all time, is talking about Sidney Crosby. And he is on fire once again. And this Penguins team is not done yet. I thought they were, but they're not. I'm going to talk about it. What do you do with Sid? Maybe it's time to sell high. I'll talk about that later in the episode, along with my Thursday night bets. Tallied up my record for the year. We'll talk all about it. But let's get into it because, look, say what you will about fighting in hockey. Wednesday night, the line brawl. Yeah, you don't want to see 10 guys getting kicked off the ice at the start of the game, or maybe you do. But the bottom line and the fact remains is it is good for the game of hockey right now. People are paying attention, and the sport is alive. Hit me in the comments, guys. Tell me what you feel, what you think about fighting in hockey in general. But I'm not just talking about fighting, because when I look across the league, and there was just so many awesome storylines, so many great games. And you look at tonight, you got Washington and Pittsburgh going toe-to-toe for a playoff spot. You got all kinds of intriguing – by the way, that's a tease to bets. I'm going to talk about that later as well. I just needed to open up the show by saying there are franchise records being set point-wise players. Nikita Kucherov just hit 129 points. That's a franchise and a personal record. The Dallas Stars just set a franchise record for 8 straight wins. The league is buzzing. And as a fantasy GM right now, even if you're out of it, you can still tap into some very intriguing storylines, a couple of which I'll highlight for you on today's show. And why don't we just start with the Dallas Stars? Because 8 straight wins at this point in the season is actually much more important for me than any other time of year. And that's not a bold take, but this Dallas Stars team is rounding into form as the best team in the NHL at the most opportune time of the schedule. And I have been hard on this Dallas team for a while. Run the tape back. I've been talking about the Stars since last offseason. And yeah, it's easy to sit here and say, look at them go after they reel off 8 straight wins, but pull up their lineup. And this is what I've been talking about. This is what Wyatt Johnston could easily be a number 2 or on worse teams, a number 1 center. And he's playing on the third line. They bring in Logan Stankoven. He fits right in. The mishmash of solid NHL veterans that are still producing in Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin. And we haven't even talked about one of the best lines in hockey in RoboCop, Hintz and Pavelski up front. The next point I want to mention about this Dallas Stars team is, aside from the fact that update in the standings, because that's what a lot of what I want to mention on today's show is, these playoff pictures are really starting to come into focus. The Dallas Stars almost look like, well, that Central Division is likely theirs, and deservedly so, with 105 points as it stands on today, Thursday. They are 5 points up on Colorado. They are now 9 points up on the Winnipeg Jets. And I'll talk about the Vancouver Canucks as well. But this Dallas Stars team needs some love. And I wanted to mention Wyatt Johnston, who at 20 years old has 30 goals in his bucket already. And I really do think he's just scratching the surface. What perhaps might be more important for this Dallas Stars team right now is Jake Ottinger's play. 31, 13, and 4 this season, but he's just reeled off back-to-back shutouts. I own Jake Ottinger in multiple leagues this season. He's in my Keeper Dynasty lineup as well, for obvious reasons. He was a Vezina Award finalist last year, a fifth place vote getter. And he's just reeled off 2 shutouts again at the most opportune time of the year. Against Edmonton, a very impressive performance of 35 saves. Say what you will about the Seattle Kraken, a shutout is a shutout. If Jake Ottinger can translate this into the postseason, we know he kind of has run out of steam in the last couple of runs that he's had in the postseason. I think that he is going to be the key for this team because up front, we know what they can do, and they're proving it right now. That Western Conference playoff picture is coming into focus a lot more clarity right now up top, and in the wild card spots, whereas in the East, this Eastern wild card spot, and that's where I'm going to head to right now, this is a battle. And when I look into the standings, and we can talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, Washington Capitals, Detroit Red Wings, New York Islanders, and Pittsburgh Penguins, 2 were blue in the face. The Tampa Bay Lightning just laid a beatdown on the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's number 1. So that could most definitely still be the Toronto Maple Leafs sliding down into that top spot. I don't see either Tampa or Toronto falling out of it. However, no, that they would basically have to lose out and have a couple of these teams win out. However, that second spot, Capitals at 82 points, Red Wings at 82 points, Islanders at 81, and now all of a sudden the surging Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins at 79 points. This Eastern Conference wildcard race is going to be very spicy down the stretch. Keep your eyes double peeled on it because if you are still in the mix, players on Tampa, very valuable right now. Even the Islanders are picking up steam. These players on the teams that are really still pushing for something, those are the angles that you need to take. Is it going to pan out? Are they going to produce? Obviously, that's not a fact, but those are the angles that you want to be pouncing on. I mentioned it on yesterday's episode, how even if you're out of it as a fantasy GM and you can make moves for next season in the Keeper Dynasty realm, this is when a lot of guys will tune out. A lot of gals will tune out. You can make some nice ads down the stretch for your next season's moves. That's where I'm kind of looking at in terms of fantasy advice. But when it comes to the standings, to bring it back, Washington Capitals 82, Red Wings 82, Islanders 81 and 79. To be honest, any of those teams in the first round going up against the likes of the Hurricanes, Rangers, Bruins, and Panthers, even the Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm taking all of those teams that I just mentioned. The Caps, Wings, Isles, Pens, they're getting dusted in the first round. So I think that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind here is even if these teams do punch a ticket and at this point flip a coin, if I had to pick, you're going to put me on the spot, I'm going to actually ride with the New York Islanders. You probably want me to say Pittsburgh Penguins because of how much I'm a Sidney Crosby homer. But what I've seen from them over the last couple of games, and my boy, they have the best goaltender out of any of those teams there. And that's what is important at this time of year. I just mentioned it with Jake Ottinger. However, let's keep our eyes double peeled on the East. We're going to talk about the Western Conference playoff picture. I got to talk about Sidney Crosby and these surging Pens. And I got Thursday's bets on the way. We got to still stack this money ahead of the postseason. Today's episode, my friends, it's brought to you by our pals over at eBay Motors. At eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, baby, and with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Well, the East is a little bit sketch. We can say that. Those wild card teams on the bubble that I just discussed, even if they creep in, I don't see it in the first round. Whereas actually, in the West, it's basically looking like the Nashville Predators have one of those spots. The LA Kings are playing a lot better over their last 10 games, 6-4-0. They're holding down the second spot with 89 points, both teams having played 75 games. And I also just wanted to mention these Vancouver Canucks because I think we got off the rails a little bit with this Canucks team who, for the most part this season, and shout out to Rick Tocchet for sure, have been a really good team. Quinn Hughes leads the NHL by points by a defenseman with 86. That should be mentioned. He might be in the mix for a Norris. He should be. The Vancouver Canucks obviously have punched their playoff ticket, but with 102 points now and the Edmonton Oilers getting filled in by the Dallas Stars on Wednesday night, the Vancouver Canucks have basically locked that Pacific Division down. Not on paper, not mathematically, but have a look. And even me with the numbers not being exactly my strong suit, I'm going to guarantee you that it's going to be a magical run of them losing out and the Edmonton Oilers winning out for this to flip-flop. So shout out to the Vancouver Canucks. They are the Pacific Division leaders right now and probably Pacific Division champs. If you're them, though, do you not want to go up against the LA Kings instead of the Knights? You do not want that LA Kings team to slide into third and the Vegas Golden Knights to drop down to a playoffs wildcard spot, and you have to run through the reigning Cup champs. So if I'm Vancouver Canucks fans, I'm very much hoping and praying for the Vegas Golden Knights to remain in third and potentially take out the Edmonton Oilers in the first round. That would be juicy. I got bets coming up. Make sure you're tapped in. 9-game betting board Thursday night. Record on the year, 219 wins, 192 losses. Lock of the night record, 65 wins, 51 losses. We'll get into the bets in a few minutes. I got to talk about my boy, Sidney Crosby. I mentioned the Pittsburgh Penguins at length in terms of the playoff window. We know this. But have you not been paying attention to what number 87 has been doing? Because maybe you should. Aside from 84 points being sensational, Sid just set the record along with someone named Wayne Gretzky for the 19th consecutive season at a point per game rate or better. Only Wayne Gretzky has done that, and he had 19 as well. Full stop right there. Shout out to Sid. Captain Canada, one of the best to ever do it. You know, I love coming on here and giving the best players of this generation their flowers, and I've done it at length with Sidney Crosby, but I hope it's not getting tired because I'm never going to get tired watching this guy's game and develop. I don't know if you remember when Sidney Crosby entered the league, he was getting hurt a lot. Not even right off the bat, but over the first 5 or 6 seasons of his career, he was injured a lot. He was playing a very aggressive style of play. He learned, he adapted, and he changed. He changed his approach, and now he is still producing, and he's going to enter next season at 37 years old and potentially be a top fantasy draft pick. And I'm not saying the first round, but I would say he's right there out of the, hey, deeper leagues, he might be. I'm getting on a ramble here. Let's tighten it back up. This is where I miss Steele. The point about Sid is, he's on fire right now. 84 points in 75 games this season is special. But when you look at this team about to fade, and, you know, they traded Gensel, everyone knows about how Sid's been pissed off. But he does what he does. He does his game, lets the game do the talking. He has 28 points in the last 21 games, including 20 assists. This guy is just special. He continues to be an absolute fantasy hockey dynamo. He's almost logging 20 minutes of ice time per night still, and he has put this Pittsburgh Penguins team on his back. And when you look at next season, though, and this is my point about fantasy and perhaps selling high on Sid, after all of that's been said, you can never ignore an opportunity in the fantasy game to get a leg up on the competition. And sometimes these names, these players that you fall in love with, a.k.a. me and Sidney Crosby. And look, guys, I own Sidney Crosby in my Keeper Dynasty League, and I myself am taking a very serious look at what I can do to establish myself. Look, this season I'm out of it. I think I'm finishing 9th out of 16 guys. It's rough. But if I can position myself well for next season, take a look at what Sid's going to have to play with next year. And I know you're saying it's probably going to be the same as this year. It might also be a lot worse. And no disrespect to Riley Smith and Brian Rust. Imagine what Sidney Crosby will be doing even if you just slotted him into, I don't even know, the New York Rangers lineup or something like that. My goodness me. So the point on selling high on Sid is a very realistic one, because when he's doing special things like this and stringing together point streaks and, you know, putting up numbers like he is right now, add in the name and the value that he brings in fantasy, and you're going to get back a whole boatload of talent perhaps. And that could mean a lot different, because can you expect a 37-year-old to replicate 85, 90 points? You're getting the absolute most out of Sidney Crosby right now. It will be hard for him to replicate this next year, especially with potentially a worse off Pittsburgh Penguins roster. Looking at cap friendly, they are returning a lot of the same guys next year. That might not be a good thing. So I just had to look at the future for Sidney Crosby. And right now, considering how much he's cooking, and they got these Penguins right there knocking on the doorstep, you are going to get more value for Sid than you would if you wait until next year. And perhaps, he could have another great season. I'm just saying you need to very seriously consider this angle, because that's how fantasy GMs who might be on the outside looking in right now make moves. That's how they get that paper. That's what we got to be doing at the end of today's episode, right after the break. I got big time bets on deck. Hopefully put a little bit more playoff money in that pocketbook. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Robinhood Retirement. Shout out to Robinhood. Did you know even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from the other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap. On the 3% match, Robinhood Gold gets you the most of your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. A little bit of legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to ROAs and 401ks. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC is a registered broker-dealer. Okay, my friends. Time to get down to business. I like that. I got that DJ Tiesto song. Let's get down. Anyway, no one needs to hear me sing. However, hopefully some of these bets are singing. It's getting a little hot under these lights here, people, but I'm ready to go. I got notes flying out of everywhere. By the way, mentioning those Dallas Stars, another little tidbit about that balanced lineup. And this is what I literally got sticky notes all over the place. They have 7 20-plus goal scorers this year. That's most in the NHL. 7 guys have 20-plus goals. And they have the blue line they have with Miro Heiskanen. They bring in Chris Tanev, other balanced blue liners back there in Esa Lindell. And then you factor in Scotty Wedgwood and Jake Ottinger in the cage. I'm gonna say it right now. That's my pick for the Stanley Cup as it stands. Steele and I will break down every single playoff matchup, round by round, matchup for matchup, X factors, bets, who wins, and how many games, all throughout the postseason. We're here all summer long. Make sure you drop us that 5-star review. Smash the subscribe button. It helps out the pod a lot. We appreciate the feedback. I love jumping on and hearing from you guys. Hit me in the DMs. I got my emails up. We're on Twitter, X. Check us out. There go the plugs, because here come the bets. Yeah, that was a good segue, but here we go. Thursday night, we got 9 games on the board. And like I mentioned, the NHL is alive and well. And yes, I did tease to a Sidney Crosby pick, because that is my lock of the night. You know where I'm headed with that one, baby, and I'll explain that one in a second. But this LA Kings team is rolling into the San Jose Sharks, and I know the San Jose Sharks have actually been a bit of a pesky squad over the last couple of weeks, giving teams the close rides. They're still 1-8-1 in their last 10, and the LA Kings actually lost to them their last time out. However, I watched the LA Kings game the other night against the Seattle Kraken, and again, it's the Seattle Kraken, but they have looked a lot better over their last 10. They beat Vancouver, they beat Tampa Bay, they dusted aside Minnesota. Over the last couple of weeks, they have been a much better team, and that, I think, is the team that you're going to see more often than not down the stretch. They just have too much talent up front. Really good season from Trevor Moore. Hat trick the other night. Dubois has 3 assists. If those peripheral pieces can go, and Fiala's going how he is, they're going to be a tough out in the first round. I'll just say that. So give me the Kings. Give me the Kings on the puck line. -1.5. You're going to probably get a -130 odds, something around there. Jump on the best one. Shout out to FanDuel. That's number 1, though. Kings are going to dust aside the Sharks. This is a big couple of games for the LA Kings, obviously, right now in terms of playoff positioning. That doesn't need to be said. Speaking of which, I mentioned the New York Islanders as the team if I was going to pick one, even though I think all 4 of those clubs on the bubble, Caps, Pens, Islanders, Red Wings, will all get filled in the first round. I'm going to go with the Islanders with my boy Sorokin. And when I look at this matchup against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I know the Columbus Blue Jackets just played a really good game in a win over the Colorado Avalanche the other night. I think that was Monday night. The Islanders are 8-0-2 against the Columbus Blue Jackets in their last 10. They've played neat and tidy back-to-back games against Philly and Chicago. I know it's Philly and Chicago, but they also just beat the Florida Panthers. Most of these games have been staying under the number. I would also lean to the under in this one, most definitely. But hit me with the Islanders on the money line. Where's my odds here? Islanders, you're going to be paying a lot of juice. It's minus 180. Put it into a parlay. Thank me later. The Islanders have looked good the last 2 games, and they own the Columbus Blue Jackets of late. Lock of the night, baby. And this is the best game of the night. If, again, I said about checking your pulse over the last couple of days, if you haven't been feeling this NHL action, this is another one of those situations because there is nothing much better than Sid versus Ovi and something important on the line. They are also going toe-to-toe for the postseason. This is going to be an amazing game. And I'm going back to the well. And I mentioned it. In the last 21 games, Sidney Crosby has 20 assists. Hit me with Sid, my favorite player prop that if you've ever listened to this segment, you know this hits for me. I'm going to say at about an 80% clip. I hope that didn't just jinx us, but maybe you just need to hear this. In 70 career regular season games for our boy, 90 career points, including 59 assists. That's almost an assist per game. Check me on the math. Hit me with Sid as my lock of the night for any time assists. You know I'm about that life. You know we're about this betting life. We'll be back tomorrow for Friday's episode. Steele will be back in the booth. Shout out to the everydayers. Shout out to everyone out there. Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports streaming service 24/7. If you're tired of all the yelling on ESPN and Fox Sports and you had to turn down the volume, you want to be checking out that Locked On Sports today, the free 24/7 streaming channel. Head over to Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You'll find all of the content that you need. Locked On, your team every single day. Thank you for tuning in for the Thursday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Shout out to everyone holding us down. Good luck with your bets tonight, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow.